Hey everybody, I'm Moment, and today I'm sitting here with.
My name is Josh from the Pursuit of Infinity podcast.
Okay, glad to have you today.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. So, tell me a little bit about your podcast.
So, the podcast generally we talk about psychedelics. That's our main thing. We love psychedelics. We talk about esoteric ideas, exploring consciousness, science, even some politics, pop culture stuff. But it mostly centers around the esoteric, the spiritual, and basically our quest to understand our own minds.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of those things are kind of melting into each other, especially now.
They definitely are, and they're starting to get really big. A lot of people are becoming interested in these things, and you see a lot of like ancient wisdom starting to pop up again. So yeah, it's a very interesting time for this type of stuff.
Yeah, that's for sure. Right. So what inspired you to start the podcast?
Well, me and my brother, we run the podcast together, so we've always talked about this kind of stuff. Psychedelics have, dramatically changed our lives in, amazing ways, very profound ways. And about 2 years ago, I stumbled upon this course through a website called Psychedelics Today. And the course was called Navigating Psychedelics for Clinicians and Therapists. And then the second part of it was called, um, what was it called? Integration and Self-Care.
Okay.
So basically, this whole class was about 8 to 10 weeks. I forget how many weeks it was. And at the end of the course, there's what they called an integration project. So the concept behind that is, when you take a psychedelic, generally you have a very profound experience, and then you have to integrate that into your life afterward. So the concept behind this project was you integrate everything you've learned in the class and put together some sort of a plan forward. Some people were submitting pieces of art. Some people were structuring resumes to apply for jobs that were in the psychedelic field. So what I decided to do with my brother was structure out and plan a podcast. And it's been history since then.
Okay, I love that. Sounds good. Okay. So I've been reading a little bit into it, and it seems like psychonaut is somebody that explores altered states of consciousness with the assistance of substances, right?
Yeah, that's the basic idea, exploring consciousness, exploring reality, exploring yourself, exploring all of the things that psychedelics can offer you within the experience.
Okay. What's one of the memorable experiences you've had on your journey?
Oh man, there's so many. I mean, just the experience of oneness that you feel with everyone, and the experience of the divine, that's really the thing that changed it all for me, was experiencing a connection with source or God, if you want to call it. But specifically, I'd say probably the most transformative experience I ever had was actually with my fiance. We were going through some rough times. We've been together for coming up on 16 years now.
Oh, nice.
Um, and we were having some rough times, and I had started to research psychedelics, and I started to really get into this subject. And, as a last ditch effort, I said to her, why don't we try this together? Maybe we can connect with one another on a way that we haven't been able to before. So she agreed, and we took a pretty large dose together. It was about 4 dried grams of mushrooms. And we proceeded to have a heart-opening experience together where we were able to connect on a level we were never able to before. We were able to open up with each other and communicate, because one of the great things that psychedelics do is they tend to, at a certain dose, dissolve the boundaries of your mind, the walls that you put up through experiencing trauma and going through everything that you go through in your life. And along with that, being able to experience the power of the mind and the the power of source and divinity together was just monumental for us.
Okay. Hmm. So when you take it, what do you actually see?
It's interesting. That really depends on dose. So the sub-threshold doses, well, first we'll start off with talking about maybe microdosing. A lot of people are microdosing nowadays. So what a microdose is you just take a tiny little bit, so little that you don't actually feel any psychoactive effects at all, nothing. If you feel at all high, then you've taken too much. So the utility in that is that it tends to heighten your senses. It allows you to explore your creativity in a way that is more open. So people in Silicon Valley, people who work in tech, they tend to do this a lot. They use LSD, I think, mostly. Um, but it really helps with productivity and just quality of life. You can use it as almost like a daily antidepressant as well, because it really helps to elevate your mood. It helps to promote openness. So that's one of the great benefits of the microdose. But for me, I like to go a little bit higher and experience the visions. So then you can get to like what's about 1 gram, 2 grams. It's like a lower dose. And what you see there is your visuals are usually very intense there. Now, this all comes from my personal experience. This varies from person to person dramatically.
Mhm.
But for me, from my experience, you see a lot of visuals, patterns, and things like that will move around. The walls will breathe. The environment will change. Sometimes the room can get really narrow and long, or the opposite, it can get small and compact. It's very interesting. It really shows you that your visual perceptions are not quite accurate, because with just a tweak of brain chemistry, everything around you can change. And it looks very real. It's not as if it's not like a marijuana high where it sort of seems like what you're seeing is there, but you really start to see things around you move like for real, and you can focus on something and see it move and see it change. Now, I've never had experiences where like you see a pink elephant. That's a classic thing. Like people talk about real intense visual hallucinations of like seeing a physical object in your presence that's not there. That's, in my experience, kind of like propaganda that was put forth like back in the 60s and the early days when they were trying to suppress these types of things. But
But when
the
people want to
visuals
see
are,
the elephant,
I mean, there's more interesting things in there to see than like an elephant in your room. The way that stuff moves, the way that patterns and things around you melt and change and breathe, to me is more interesting than just seeing like some random object in your room that wasn't previously there. But then when you start to ascend to the higher doses, that's when it really gets crazy. 4, 5 grams and up, even 3.5 grams will get you this. But everything in your visual field, as I said before, does start to move, and that gets more intense. But what's even more interesting is when you close your eyes. What you see behind your eyelids is like nothing you could ever imagine. It's insanity. From my experience, you see these complex geometric moving morphing patterns that are impossible in reality. I remember one of the first things that I thought, during this type of experience was I had no idea my mind was capable of coming up with this stuff or seeing this stuff, because it's almost a co-creation that you're doing with the substance itself. It feels like you're merging with it, and your mind is sort of co-creating what's going on in your environment. And along with those visuals, you can see some really miraculous things, but at a certain point, it gets beyond the visual, and this is my favorite part, where it ascends past the visual nature of the experience, and what you have is like this internal connection and source, or connection with source, or with God. I call it source because God's not really a word that resonates too much with me. But that's the basic like rundown of the threshold of doses and like the sort of experience you can kind of expect from it.
Okay, so you feel closer with the spirit, whatever it is you call it.
Yeah, and for someone like me, I was a massive atheist before all of this, and it completely shifted my paradigm of what reality was and what the earth and the cosmos was capable of. Um, and that's one of the most amazing parts of psychedelics, is that they create and promote paradigm shifts. So, what you previously thought in your life, you go through life, you experience traumas, you experience what's been taught to you by your authority figures. You see the news, and the news is telling you what's real. You have this structure of government that you feel is uh, essential, and you're just sort of stuck in this matrix of what's around you and what you've been told is real and true. And then when you have an experience like this, it busts all those paradigms to pieces, and it dissolves all the boundaries that your mind has put in place and that other people have put in place for you. And what that can do is just change people's lives so dramatically. I mean, these substances are being throttled through the medical system right now for help with people who have treatment-resistant depression and post-traumatic stress disorder, end
I
of
was just
life
thinking that
anxiety.
what you're saying, it sounds excellent for people, well, pretty much for everybody that's going through whatever their trauma is.
Yeah, absolutely. It's weird how applicable it is when done correctly. It's very, very essential and important that it's done in a particular way with a particular amount of respect.
Okay. Like just basically don't go wild.
Yeah, and for me, I take it beyond that. I respect the substance in like a ceremonial type of way. I like to create a ceremony out of it. There's a few tenets that I think are very, very important. People say set and setting. I like to add dose to that as well. Set means your mindset, your intentions, what you're bringing to the experience, how you're feeling that day, the types of stress you might be under, the problems you might have in your life, all of the things that you're bringing to the experience, both intentionally and unintentionally. Then setting is your physical environment. What's it set up like? Are you in a safe place? Is it peaceful? Is it relaxing? Is it comfortable? Making sure that you have no obligations that day. No one's going to come to your door. Your phone is away. Your keys are far away. You're not even thinking about driving. There are no weapons, no dangerous things in the area. And you want to create an environment that adheres to uh, the completion of whatever goal you have or intention you bring to it. Intention is so, so, so important. If you bring the intention to it just to party and to have a good time, sure, you can party and have a great time with it. I don't suggest doing a high dose if you want to party with it, but that's a fun thing to do. It's fine. But the real experience comes when you treat it with the level of respect of like a religious sacrament.
Okay. So you mentioned what you bring into it. So what if you're, I guess, like in a bad mood, kind of angry? What happens if you take it then?
You can do that, but you just have to realize that when you get into the experience, you're going to treat that experience as something that is going to change the way that you're feeling. You know what I mean? Like nobody goes into a psychedelic experience with the intention of anger or revenge or anything like that. You want to go into the experience, even if you are feeling like kind of on edge, you're feeling triggered or something like that. Maybe something happens in your day and it just didn't go very well. You can still take the substance, but you have to be that much stronger and dedicated to your intention. Whether that's To me, I feel that the main two intentions that are most effective in these spaces are healing. So if you need to heal a trauma, if you want to fix any sort of an ailment, an issue psychologically that you may have, maybe you want to stop smoking, maybe you want to lose weight, maybe you want to change your mindset as to how you want to approach your work or anything else you do. That to me falls under like a healing modality. And then the other one to me is exploration. If you want to explore the realms of the unconscious, you want to explore, your mind, the cosmos, your heart, anything that guides your curiosity toward understanding more about reality. I find that those two intentions, in my experience, seem to be the most beneficial.
Okay. So, and correct me if I'm wrong, for the most part, it kind of gets you open minded a bit, right?
Definitely, yeah. That's one of the main traits. Is we do have this trait, a psychological trait called openness. It's referred to as openness, and it refers to your ability to understand new ideas, your ability to intake information that wasn't previously part of your paradigm. Maybe you're a hardcore Republican or something, and you hate Democrats. If you open up your openness trait, then you'll be able to understand that other side a little more. Something that might be opposite to what your values are, you'll be able to sort of appreciate and understand that perspective. So I think that's a kind of like it's a really, really useful thing to have in life. And I think it's one of the most important things that psychedelics do for the mind.
Yeah. Damn, sounds like politicians should be taking that.
I totally agree.
So it gets you open minded. How do you keep your balance between being open minded and also being critical at the same time?
So being open-minded doesn't necessarily negate being critical. It actually, to me, it helps my critical thinking because it allows me to accept ideas that I would not normally accept in a way where I'm open to understanding more about them. So I can delve deep into a topic that I would have never normally thought could garner my interest. And I'll learn more about that topic. I'll integrate that part of, whatever parts I figure out about that topic into my life. Um, like, for instance, it really helped to open up my mind to spirituality in general. As I said before, I was a massive atheist.
Mhm.
So it opened up my mind to accepting not only religions, because man, when I tell you I was atheist, like my life's mission was to convince religious people that they were wrong. I was that kind of dude. It wasn't a good look.
Oh, you're like a
And
vegan.
what's that?
You were like a vegan.
Yeah, I was like a vegan. Yeah, like you have to think the way that I do because, what I was doing was I was approaching life in a way where I needed the validation of people outside of me. I needed other people to agree with me and basically tell me that I was a valid human because I didn't have that within myself. And psychedelics, along with opening up my mind to other ideas, opened up my heart and opened up this path of compassion for both myself and for everyone around me. So, the people who were reading the Bible and going to church, now I understand what they're doing and I appreciate them. And I actually really, really love their doctrine. I have begun to appreciate and understand Jesus and, all these things. So it's really helped me a lot in that way.
Okay, so it's brought you peace.
It brought me the ability to find peace, I would say.
Okay.
Because these things, they're not panaceas. People might tell you that you just take a few mushrooms and then you're going to be enlightened. Your life's going to be forever amazing and you have nothing else to worry about. But the way I see it is these are tools. They're amazing, miraculous tools, but they're tools like anything else. So they're like a technology. You use them with a particular intention and you allow them to do their work on you while you do the work that you have to do in your regular life. Hence the integration part of it.
Hmm. like a spiritual medicine.
Yeah, yep, absolutely.
Okay. So what's one of the current issues that's intriguing you right now?
Man, there's so much. I mean, politics really gets me going. It's really interesting because I find myself directly in the middle of both parties. So to me, it's it's like a really fun game to to see what's going on both sides. But man, the biggest issue right now, and my brother and I have been releasing a bunch of episodes on our podcast about this, is the UFO and UAP phenomenon.
Yeah.
Just so endlessly interesting, man.
You heard what happened today?
What happened today?
So I think it was yesterday or day before yesterday. Russia, from what I understand, was trying to get to the dark side of the moon. That crashed. Today, India got there, which, it's kind of weird because now all of a sudden aliens are real, you know? And then on top of that, also today, the guy in Russia that tried to mutiny or whatever it was died in an airplane accident.
Convenient, right?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it's wild. You know, we were throttled and told we were crazy for even thinking that aliens and UFOs and UAP could be a real thing. And now, just a month or two back, there was that congressional hearing. Did you see that?
I saw the highlights.
It was
I saw
crazy,
the
man.
highlights. I hit rewind. I looked out the window like, what's going on? You know?
Right? It feels like we're in some sort of very monumental time. That it felt like a very special moment having our government, our elected government, nonetheless, asking these whistleblowers, about very specific questions. And it's funny, like a lot of the answers that they were giving were like, oh, I can't answer that, but I'd be happy to provide you with those details in a closed hearing, which is essentially a yes to those
Yeah,
questions.
pretty
It's
much.
wild.
Yeah, I was surprised they said anything kind of out loud. But,
Yeah.
mhm.
Oh, I'm sorry. Continue.
Well, so also, I don't really understand why people don't believe in it because most people believe in angels. And what's the difference in them?
To me, it's the propaganda. Nobody wants to be crazy. Nobody wants to be considered a conspiracy theorist. Nobody wants to be considered wrong. And we have this paradigm in our country because we were founded as a Christian nation. So there's this opening for people to be able to have views of angels and God and believe in these kinds of things. But we've never had any sort of openness as a society toward UFOs and aliens. I mean, it started in, the 50s with Roswell. That was a massive, massive cover up. There was obviously something going on there. Now, whether or not there was a real alien, body or UFO crash, we don't really know because apparently all of the documents from that time have been destroyed. Um, but there's been just this massive amount of propaganda that's been put into place telling us that we're crazy, gaslighting us for trying to just research and understand the potential of this. So I think that's why a lot of people don't really believe it. They don't want to be wrong. They don't want to be a conspiracy theorist.
Yeah, but at the same time, those same people, when you speak to them, you ask them about like, angels and stuff like that, they're all in.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, I feel like there's this, maybe if we had like a church of aliens or something like that where people could go to that was, culturally sanctioned, where there was a minister that told you about UFOs and aliens, it would be more
I bet you
acceptable.
there is
But
somewhere.
oh, there's got to be somewhere. And if not, it's going to happen soon.
I got a wild theory that we're the aliens.
Do you think like we're hybrids or something? Like the aliens created us in some way or
Well, so I'm not too sure about all of that. I don't think they are the ones that created us, but what I do think is this. So you mentioned Christianity, right? So we were all in the Garden of Eden, right? Got kicked out of the Garden of Eden, right? Why didn't we just walk back in?
Good question.
Because it wasn't on Earth. Otherwise, we would have just walked in, hopped the gate or something. You know,
I see. Yeah, yeah,
for
yeah.
aliens.
I've heard a lot of really interesting theories on what it means to have been kicked out of the Garden of Eden. One of my favorites, obviously because I'm into psychedelics, was they say that because was it either Adam or Eve or both of them? I think the phrase was they ate from the fruit of the tree of knowledge, and if you eat the fruit from the tree of knowledge, then it said that you become as we are, which is divine. So what the theory is that we took the psychedelic, whatever substance it may have been, the mushroom, whatever it is, and we merged with the divine. And when we did that, we separated ourselves from the Garden of Eden, which I think is kind of a cool theory.
Hmm. I've heard a theory that the apple was never specifically said to be an apple, that it might have in fact been a mushroom.
Yeah, exactly. Just because they use certain words doesn't necessarily mean that it's to be taken literally. And dude, if you go into any store, say you want to go pick up a Bible, you go into the store, you find the Bible, every single Bible you find in your store, maybe 95% of them, they're going to say KJV on the cover, which means King James Version.
Okay.
That is a version of the Bible that has been transcribed by the Society of King James. This was approved by King James himself.
Yeah.
So these scriptures have been rewritten over and over and over. I mean, just take into consideration the Old Testament versus the New Testament. These things are revised and translated from language to language. So it's really, really difficult to take the words and the concepts themselves literally in the Bible.
Hmm. Yeah, one of the things I heard is that it might have been a mushroom, and then that kind of just. So we've all heard the story, ignorance is bliss, right? Which perhaps that's what Eden was. And then the mushroom snapped us out of it. What's your
Very
thought?
possible. That's very possible. I mean, the way that it would snap you out of it would be, again, connecting you with the divine or ascending your consciousness to a higher level, a level where you're not convinced of the paradigms and structures that you were built on, or that you evolved under. And there are theories that humans evolved, we co-evolved with psilocybin mushrooms. There's a theory put forth called the stoned ape hypothesis, which was put forth by Terence McKenna. And his claim is that
Who's Terence McKenna again?
Terence McKenna, he was an ethnobotanist, a philosopher, an explorer, and a legendary psychonaut. One of probably the most legendary psychonaut there ever was. Him and his brother, they actually brought psilocybin mushrooms and a mainstream way of growing them to America from Mexico, which was just monumental for the movement itself. So he proposed this theory or this hypothesis that we co-evolved with psilocybin mushrooms and that they gave us the ability to essentially raise our consciousness and double in brain size in a very short amount of time. It's a pretty interesting theory.
So, this is the way my brain works. What happens if we just feed that to a bunch of monkeys?
Well, what they say was that it happened over millions and millions of years and millions of doses because they had integrated this substance into their diet. The basic premise is that, we were cattle farmers at the time. We were nomadic and we were ascending from the trees, because obviously in this hypothesis, we are under the paradigm of evolution. Whether or not you want to believe that, another story. But under that paradigm, and with climate change, was the drying of the African plains. So we were forced to coexist among predators that we normally weren't capable of defending against. So along with grazing cattle, we would follow our cattle because we were nomadic and cattle, obviously, they shit. And within the cow shit was the emergence of these mushrooms. And psilocybin mushrooms are known to grow in cow pastures throughout the country, especially in like warmer climates.
Oh,
So it's said that we, as nomadic, half ape, half human things, were experimenting with eating these things at different doses, you know, because you find a plant, you eat it. You're hungry, you know, you've got nothing else to do. You pretty much experiment with everything around you.
yeah.
Process of elimination allows you to find what works with your diet and what doesn't. So, according to Terence McKenna, at the low doses, and this works with the dose thresholds as well. It coincides. Lower doses, it increases your visual edge detection. So it increases your ability to hunt, to see predators, so you can escape. So it has a utility there. And then you take a little bit of higher dose, and you have creativity. You have increased eros, which essentially is sexual activity. So in your tribe, you're producing more offspring, which grows your family, grows your tribe, which is good for survival, obviously. And then at even higher doses, he would say you're slammed to the floor of the cave and you're introduced to the concepts of religion. And all of those things, the gamut of the experiences, again, over millions of years and millions of experiences, it's said to be able to enhance your ability to survive in the environment. And one of the more important parts about this is what psilocybin does is, it's kind of hard to believe, but so we have in our brain receptors for serotonin, and serotonin is like the consciousness chemical. So these are called the HT2A receptors in our brain. So it's interesting, psilocybin fits into those receptors more efficiently and better than serotonin itself. So what this says is that it's possible that the evolution of the receptors themselves were brought into reality by psilocybin mushrooms themselves. So that's very interesting as well. And psilocybin also promotes what's called neurogenesis in the brain and neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity being the ability to change behaviors, and neurogenesis being the ability to actually create neurons in the brain, which scientists did not think was possible until about the 90s.
What do you mean by create neurons? What does that do?
So as we age, and if you get injured, your ability to create new neural pathways diminishes over time. So it's harder to learn things. It's harder to accept new ideas. But what psilocybin can help to do is to actually reverse that process. So you're able to create new neurons, create new neural pathways, and promote learning, essentially.
Okay. Hmm. That's interesting. Never knew that.
Yeah, it's very, very interesting stuff, which is why a lot of people are starting to hop on board, or at least have more interest in this stoned ape hypothesis.
So, at what point did it get frowned upon?
I mean, it was frowned upon since the very beginning. I mean, think about it. If you tell, even to this day, you tell a bunch of scientists that you think that the doubling of the human brain size, which actually is a scientific anomaly, like that's agreed upon in evolutionary biology, that there was a doubling of the human brain size over a very short period of time, according to the evolutionary scale of humans. And if you just tell a group of scientists that that's because we were taking magic mushrooms, they're going to laugh at you generally, because nobody's really taught that in school. So
I heard something before that the old churches used to use like this incense thing they would flip around, and there was something in there that I guess would get people more open.
I'm not too familiar with that. I've never heard that before.
I think they found it, I want to say in Greece, I'm not sure.
You might be referring to the Eleusinian Mysteries. That was like a it was a fertility cult where they had um, these rituals that they would do. So
Yeah,
the
no, this
ritual,
was just like regular old, you know.
yeah, that I'm not familiar with. Interesting.
Yeah, because the way it sounds, it doesn't seem like it should be something that was ever frowned upon. You know?
Yeah, I mean, I would think that the people that would frown upon it would be the ones who were trying to suppress it. It's arguable what those reasons could possibly be. I know that like when the Europeans came across and started to conquer the world, they suppressed a lot of these like psychedelic type of religions that were based upon these sacraments because they brought the Christian way, and for Christianity it was very different.
Okay. Has there been any culture that I guess just never stopped?
Yeah, there have been a few. There's a Mexican culture, the Mazatecs, that continue to use psilocybin mushrooms. And there are a few here and there, mostly in South America. You'll see, have you heard of ayahuasca?
Yes.
The um, the southern parts of the world, South America, Costa Rica, that area, their culture is steeped in ayahuasca, which is it translates to the vine of the soul or vine of souls. And their idea is that you go into these plant medicine experiences and you commune with the spirits, and they tell you things, they give you information, and all of that. So there are definitely cultures that are still adhering to these types of things.
So I think I heard of it that different people at different times have taken it and have kind of seen the same thing.
Yeah, dude. I've had experiences of that, telepathy, and like having the exact same visions as somebody else. I've had it happen to me at the same time where, me and a person that I was taking the substance with had the same vision at the same time, and we weren't speaking to one another. And it was a very specific type of vision. But then there's people who across eons, across time, across um, distances that you couldn't even imagine, like in times before we were even wayfaring, before we were able to even sail across the sea, different cultures were using the same types of substances and having the same types of visions. So to me, that speaks to the quote unquote reality of what you're seeing and what you're going through. And it begs the question, what came first? If you look at the painting you have on your wall back there, that's the Eye of Horus. And that is one of the supposed pieces of iconography that may or may not have been extracted from, the use of these substances and the experiences that they offer.
So I heard about the shared experiences before, but I also heard that it, as far as time wise, it's pretty quick. Like it's not something that lasts hours or anything like that, right?
Well, that depends on the substance.
Oh,
Um,
specifically the one you were just talking about, the ayahuasca.
Ayahuasca can last 4 to 6, even 12 hours, depending
Oh,
uh,
yeah, that's not
on
the
the
one I was thinking
dose.
of then.
Yeah, you may have been thinking about DMT, smoked DMT.
Maybe.
So actually, it's interesting. So the components that make up ayahuasca, it's the vine, which is Banisteriopsis caapi vine, and then there's the leaf. It's called the chacruna leaf. So the leaf itself contains DMT, dimethyltryptamine, very, very close to the substance in psychedelic mushrooms. And if you would just eat that leaf, or if you would just try to eat DMT itself, even in its crystallized form, nothing happens. Your body breaks it down right away, doesn't cross the blood-brain barrier, nothing happens at all. So what you need is this vine, which so there's a system in your nervous system called the monoamine oxidase system. So what that does is it breaks down the DMT. It's a system of enzymes that breaks it down instantly, and you don't experience anything. But this vine, it has, I believe it's harmine is the chemical in the vine that acts as a monoamine oxidase inhibitor. So it inhibits the system within your gut that would break down the DMT. So it allows you
Firewall?
to, yeah, you can think of that as a firewall. And this vine breaks that firewall down. So you're allowed, like, so it allows you to ingest DMT, and you drink this brew that they create. A lot of times they'll put a bunch of different additives in it, a bunch of different like plant spirits, they would call them. Um, and that's how the DMT becomes orally active. But DMT itself, if you would extract DMT from the bark of a plant, or you'd get it somehow, it comes in like, it's a powdered, like crystallized form, and you vaporize that, you smoke it. That's the one that lasts just a few minutes.
You said powdered crystallized?
Yeah, it's like a crystallized powdery type of substance that you get.
Like Coke?
Yeah, similar. Yeah, it's actually similar.
Okay.
Not in experience, but in look and in substance for sure.
Okay. Huh. That's interesting. So there's a firewall already built in us for some reason.
Yeah, because most plants that you come across contain DMT. If we didn't have that system, every time you ate a salad, you'd trip because it's in most plants that are in the world. It's
You know how
in,
popular salads would be?
right? I would be eating them all the time. Actually, you know what? I would selectively eat my salads if I would way more selectively eat my salads if they had true DMT in them.
Hmm. So they think that has a big part to do with us evolving.
Yeah, and I mean, the more and more you lend to that hypothesis, and the more you look into it, especially if you have the experience yourself, it makes sense, because one of the things that it feels like, at least in my experience, is that your consciousness is evolving or something, and then you come out of it a different person. So it feels like you sort of evolved in a way. So when people talk about these things assisting in the evolution of the mind and in the brain itself, it feels like that could be true. It really does.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. I mean, if it gets you open, why wouldn't it?
Yeah, and I mean, along with all of the stuff it does in your brain, it's crazy, man. It's amazing.
Hmm. You ever saw the video of the monkey that's fishing now?
With the spear,
Yeah,
yeah. Like, what the
yeah.
hell is that?
Yeah, I
That's
saw that.
crazy.
I was a little bit concerned. I was like, all right, interesting, interesting times.
Yeah, man. It's like we're witnessing the Stone Age from a higher level. It's really crazy.
Yeah. Hmm. Wonder if we're gonna be able to start flying or anything soon.
Well, hopefully, man, if they give us the technology of these UFOs and UAPs that they've been holding on to for God knows how long.
Right. Yeah, I'm kind of curious. What do they actually have? Because like AI supposedly has been out for a while, just not to us.
Well, I mean, it's proposed that they have the ability to at least, well, okay, so what they were proposing, the whistleblowers in that congressional hearing, was that there are back engineering programs. So we've found these craft, whether they were shot down or a retrieval from a crash or something like that. And we have these programs that are, this is a very important point, they're backed by um, like weapons contracting companies like Raytheon, Boeing, Lockheed Martin, all these weapons
Wow.
manufacturers. Yeah, exactly. Those are the people who are in control of these things. And what they say is that, we've been able to discover incremental technological advancements, like by back engineering these things, but we haven't been able to like successfully recreate what we found.
Yeah, we've had an insane amount of new developments within this lifetime.
Yeah, dude, it's crazy.
Yeah, it really is. Hmm, really is.
Yeah, it's like things are speeding up, and that's another thing that Terence McKenna proposed as well, was that he had this time wave theory that was based off his experiences, where he would say that, and this actually seems to be coming to fruition, that as time goes on, more events happen in a condensed period of time infinitely. So eventually, it's almost like right now, if you look at what happens in, say, one day, the amount of events, the amount of things that are happening, interactions, that is equivalent to, say, the amount of events that happened in the last 1,000 years or something like that. You know what I mean? Like back in the Stone Age and in ancient times, not much really happened in terms of monumental events and just
Yeah.
things, and it seems that things are speeding up,
Yeah, those
more
things
and
are
more.
happening pretty often.
Yeah.
Shit, since between I think yesterday and the day before yesterday, we've had at least three or four.
And before that, it's continuing. It's so frequent. It's really, really
Oh no,
weird,
I mean
man.
just within the last 2 3 days.
Exactly. Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Hmm. Yeah, I just my opinion. I think so much stuff is happening that people just kind of don't care anymore. Like by the
Yeah, man.
time you intake one thing, something else already happened.
Yeah, it's like the doom scroll culture, You see one tweet and it grabs your attention for half a second, but you got to continue to scroll, because your mind just needs that hit. It needs that dopamine hit, that lottery.
Yeah, there's days I'm like, you know what? Today I'm not putting on the news. I'm just not gonna do it.
Hmm.
No. Hmm. All right. So if you could choose one thing for humanity, what would it be and why?
It would be compassion. So the reason that I think that compassion is the most important human trait we can have that moves us in a direction of positivity is all of our problems are rooted in a lack of compassion. You know, greed, the need for material goods and money, not being able to feel the pain of other people. If we could just feel for a second the pain of the Iraqi people, for the war that we ensued in Iraq, we would not do that. You know what I mean? If we could just feel the pain that we promote across the world, we wouldn't be doing the things that we're doing. And I think the only way that we're going to fix the problems that we have are to approach them from a mode of compassion. And it just so happens that psychedelics really, really help you as a tool to be able to accept compassion, and at least to explore modes of thought where compassion is the center of those things.
Now, and again, just my opinion. I think people, for the most part, have compassion. It's just, again, the warmongers don't.
Mm-hmm.
Because what's happening in the world, nobody's gonna deny what's happening. Everybody knows what's happening. It's just, I don't think it's a thing of people not caring.
Maybe it's that they don't have a broad enough perspective to truly understand the result of their actions. Because it's funny, I like to do this too, where like I'll say, oh, it's not us. If only we had somebody in power that was able to have compassion and was able to make changes. And we do see some candidates coming up nowadays that are starting to adhere to that. But the thing is, man, it starts. I blame myself and I blame all of the regular people for what's happening right now because we voted, starting with our local elections, we allowed this continued progress of these scumbags, who are rising up the ranks of politics and becoming president and then becoming cabinet members and becoming advisors and then starting to become advisors for companies like Raytheon and Boeing and all these defense contractors. It's this progressive pattern that starts with us. We have the power, and if we just had the ability to understand our power mixed with having compassion for everyone around us and ourselves, I feel like we could begin to change the world. And I think that does start with education in this country and in the Western world. We're supposed to be like the role models for the world. And we're not at this point in time. We don't teach our kids correctly. You know, we bring them up to be robots, factory workers, and, you know,
I
just
mean,
to be
that's why school
compliant.
was invented.
Yeah, exactly, man. Exactly.
You know what I never understood? American Idol. You have a phone, you get one vote. Why can't we just do that with the laws?
Dude, right? If you ask either side, the Democrats or the Republicans, either side will have an excuse as to why they don't want to allow voting to be easy, because there's a way that you can skew the difficulty of voting to work in your favor depending on what party you're in. And that's the reason, you know, that it's all about votes, it's all about money, it's all about power to
Man,
them.
how do we only have two choices? That's wild.
It's ridiculous, man. It's so dumb.
Yeah, it's like, my opinion, I don't think there are even two parties. It's the same thing.
I'm with you.
And, where can people find you? Where can people find your podcast?
The podcast is everywhere. Spotify, Apple, it's even on like Audible and Amazon, Google, anywhere you go for podcasts. We have a YouTube channel. It's youtube.com/at pursuit of infinity. Pursuitofinfinity.com. We have a website where you can listen to all of our episodes, find all the places you can follow us. And also we have a Patreon, so you can head over there if anybody wants to support the show.
Okay, sounds good. Got any last message?
Just treat thy neighbor as if they were thyself. Have compassion. You know, anybody out there, just love everyone. That's all we need is love. And also, I'd like to say, I'm currently training to become a certified psychedelic sitter and coach. So for any people out there that need any assistance in terms of integrating psychedelic experiences, anybody who's had them or who wants to have them that needs advice, or anything like that, I'm always open. You can shoot us an email, pursuitofinfinity@outlook.com. For any questions, any concerns, I'm happy to hop on a Zoom or just email back and forth with anybody who needs any assistance in this realm, because it's a sticky topic, man. And these experiences can get really dark. I've had really, really, really challenging experiences. People can confront a level of darkness that they didn't know was possible. And it's hard to deal with that, hard to integrate that into your life. So anybody out there who ever needs any advice, any assistance with pre, during, or post integration, I'm always here.
Okay. When you say darkness, what do you mean? What do you mean by that?
Darkness in many forms. Darkness for darkness's sake, because, with the extent of light, there has to be an equal and opposite extent of darkness. That's just the yin and the yang, the concept of duality itself. But also the darkness of trauma. People can experience traumas that they didn't even know happened, memories that have been repressed. And sometimes people that even just go to take mushrooms at a party, they experience these types of things unintentionally. Sometimes people have psychotic breaks because they don't know how to handle such a profound and insane experience. So I think it's very important to stress not just the positives, but there are also negatives to these types of experiences too.
Okay, that makes sense. The best way to contact you is, you said, it's through the email. Is that available on the website, like in the contact info part?
Yeah, there is a contact form part of it as well. So on the website, in the contact section, there's a form. If you fill that form out and you submit it, it'll send me an email directly to pursuitofinfinity at outlook.com. The only thing about that is, if you do send through there, you won't be able to see like the sent message that you sent out. So if you like to keep track of all of your messages that have been sent through your inbox, you can just email us directly at pursuitofinfinity@outlook.com if that's your thing.
Well, just so that they could copy and paste the email. I figured.
Of course, yeah. Oh, and also in our contact section, there's a little voice memo thing too. So you can click on the little microphone icon, record a voice memo, and that'll get sent to us as well.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hate typing. That works.
Right.
Yeah, I'm with that. All right, everybody, it's been a moment. God bless.
I appreciate you, man. Thank you.
Had a good time, man. Very,
Absolutely.
very informative.